We've all experienced a difficult child. Maybe we have one. Maybe we were one. Or maybe you've seen one at the grocery store. Now, imagine that 10x'd to this child being just a menace, kicked out of preschools, who said that they couldn't tolerate her. When she goes for an appointment, the room has to be prepped because you know she's gonna be climbing the curtains. Now, how does her life change when she is clear and connected, better able to self-regulate and become the human that she was designed to be? That's today's story, and I'm excited to share it with you. We're also going to talk about this idea of unshakable certainty, of not just believing something, but knowing, and how it changes our lives, how we can find a North Star that guides us and leads us from where we have been to where we are to where we're going. I'm Jenna Quinton, founder of Adjust Your Media and host of What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate Podcast. And this is a beautiful episode. There are lots of links and things for you, resources in the show notes, so don't miss those. Let's get started. I met today's guest in Toronto. After talking for a minute, he encouraged me, lead with your story. And it was such a powerful, simple tip that I've tried to follow since, and it has made such a difference. So welcome, Dr. Preston.
Hey, thanks, Jenna. It's an honor to be here.
So I wanted to start off with saying we could talk about your career as a chiropractor, as a consultant at Full Circle Coaching and Consulting, and we'll get to that in a minute. But your friend, Dr. Peter Amlinger, described you as an awesome spirit-guided chiropractor. So I wanted to first ask, what does that mean to be a spirit-guided person and chiropractor?
Wow. Thanks, Pete, if you ever get a chance to listen or watch this particular interview. My interpretation of that is I feel like we are definitely spiritual beings having a human experience, right? And so we do have a mind, we do have a body, we do have a spirit or soul. And coming from a left brain science background, I largely let my mind guide me in my life. And there's nothing wrong with that. This isn't a moral discussion like one's better than the other. But as I dug deeper into the philosophy of life, the philosophy of chiropractic and universal principles, and I really took more ownership of the fact that we're spiritual beings having human experience, I adopted a meditation practice that I have now, had as a regular part of my life for over 35 years. And I can hardly imagine the kind of human I'd be without it, Janet, quite frankly, right? But what it does to me, Wayne Dyer, one of my great teachers who, God rest his soul, he said that if prayer was you talking to God, then meditation is God talking to you.
Wow.
Right? I love that. And that little mantra has stuck with me. So meditation is a way to do that. And what it does is, in my estimation, is it connects us to, the creative intelligence, the universal intelligence that we talk about so much in chiropractic. And as reasonably evolved as my mind is, it's not even one gazillionth of, what's possible in the universal mind. So as a result of that, I tap into that daily, I listen, and more importantly, Jenna, I act on what I'm given. And that's a distinction I'd make that hopefully people listening might take advantage of, because I know there are lots of people that listen, but some of them don't have the courage to act. And all I can offer is that if you choose to have the courage to act, then you'll get more messages, they'll be even clearer, and you'll move on from there. So I've even taken that, because one of the things my good friend Pete and I do is we hunt and fish together. And I'm the tracker in the group, with respect to tracking animals and where they're going and stuff like that. And there's been so many times, Jenna, just even in another application where I've just literally, that makes no physical sense, the track of the game animal that we're tracking. And so I call it spirit tracking, where I just tap into, the field of possibilities, wait until I feel the energy of that. And it has taken me places that I never would have educatedly gone. So, and harvested animals that we might not have got otherwise. So there are lots of applications for living a spirit-guided life.
Wonderful. Well, I wanted to just mention that and start with that, because then that sets a framework, I think, for as we talk about a story of someone whose life was improved with chiropractic. So what story do you have for us today?
Well, when you prompted me to think that you might ask me the question, Jenna, which of the thousands do I pick from, right? So I had several that I was thinking, but then this morning in meditation, going back to the spirit guide again, I got the story of Victoria. So here's the context of the story. One of the ways, and the main way I built my practice was speaking to my community, just again, going back to telling my story, right? Mm-hmm. And as a result of this woman came up to me and she started talking to me about her daughter, Victoria, and she had 2 children. Victoria was younger, she was 3, her other daughter was 5. And with tears streaming down her face, she told me with such angst and anguish about how this little girl, she believed that there was a perfect little being inside of this human, but she was not representing himself as a beautiful human. She had been kicked out of every daycare in our city. There was only 11. She got kicked out of every one of them. So just they couldn't tolerate her. She literally threw temper tantrums that lasted from 5 to 30 minutes. She's the kind of kid that would go up to her sister, pull her hair hard to make her cry, and then laugh. She was, what some people would describe as an evil little person, and I don't necessarily love that kind of stereotype, but regardless, the child was not what you would say a culturally norm would be. So she said to me with tears streaming down her face, she says, "Do you think there's anything chiropractic could do?" And I said, "I don't know. If the child's subluxated, there's always potential." And this is the thing, Jenna, that I think is such an important concept to understand. We don't treat conditions. We treat people, or some people treat animals, but, and so I didn't treat this little girl for temper tantrums and pulling hair and being just a obnoxious little human, a little menace. I treated her because she had interference to the normal function of her nerve system, which has, hopefully everybody listening to this realizes, is the master control system of the body, controls and coordinates the function of every organ, gland, and system, including the beautiful thing that sits, above the atlas, right? And so she brought her in, and the child was very subluxed. And I started treating this kid. And this little kid, we had to almost prepare the office for when she'd show up, because we had to hide certain toys, because this is the kid that would go into the toy room and start chucking toys at little old ladies sitting in the reception area, right? She's the kid that we literally had to pull her down. She was like 6 feet up the drapes one day, pulling like hand over hand up the drapes. She, again, temper tantrums. We would see sometimes in the 20-ish minutes she'd be in the office, we'd see her throw 3 or 4 temper tantrums just in 20 minutes. She was a handful, to say the least. Time went by, and we're not with her every day, obviously, but we started to notice changes as the weeks went by. We noticed that she wasn't throwing as many temper tantrums, and then she wasn't throwing any temper tantrums in our presence. We noticed that she hadn't, in our presence, made her sister cry, and that was a marvel. So the mom always came with the kids, and then one day the dad comes. His name was Andy, who later became a practice member. And Andy came, and he never came. And so the girls, it was their turn. Both girls ran back to the adjusting area, and they jumped up on the table. And, Andy came back and was just standing there, body language, crossed arms, just watching, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just going to do my thing. I did my thing, and the girls were giggling and having fun, and I adjusted them, and then, they went to leave, and Andy just swung the door open like this. He says, "Girls, go wait in the reception area. I got to talk to this guy." And I'm like, oh, damn, what's this all about, right? And he's sitting with his arms crossed like this, and I said, what can I help you with? He goes, "I wanted to come back and see what exactly you were doing to my kids." And I'm like, oh, well, I was like, no, let me finish. I said, oh, okay. He said, I don't even understand what you just did. I'm not even sure I approve of how you did it, but I know so little about it that I don't really know what else to say about that. But he said, as one father to another, this still brings up so much emotion. He reached his hand out, Jenna, and he said, "I want to shake your hand for giving me my little girl back." You want to talk about the ripple effect in that family's life, Jenna, in her community's life.
Yes.
And that child's life. And I haven't kept track of Victoria. That was many years ago. But without keeping track of her, I have every fiber of my being knows that child's life is on a different trajectory because of the principles of chiropractic and the proper application of those principles. And that is something that I have dedicated my entire life spirit to as a hands-on chiropractor and now as a coach consultant, Jenna. So
that is beautiful. I love every part of that because I think that those children, when you see that they have all of those difficult but positive qualities of courage and perseverance and dedication, like these are big spirited people. And if this is who she was already showing as a 3-year-old, that's somebody who in any way is a earth shaker, a mountain mover. And what happens in a society if all of our world changers are subluxated as small children?
Well, just think, Jenna, what is possible for this child, the direction her life was on, which, who knows? And I don't want to get too pontificated here, but she could have ended up in prison. That was a trajectory her possible life was on versus the trajectory that all of that energy and spirit, mountain moving energy, as you just said, she could become like, the prime minister or president of a nation.
Yes.
Literally, and then change the impact of the world. And if I really want to get pontificating, then maybe she's the one that prevents World War III 20 years from now because, she is a mountain mover. But her mother had the courage to reach out to a crazy chiropractor and ask if there was a possibility. And then I, to give myself an attaboy, because I'm not as good at that as I could be, Jenna, I had the courage to say, I don't know, but let's check her. Right?
Yes.
And that to me is something that I wish more chiropractors would be willing to do.
Absolutely. And like you said, it is still going back to this idea of being spirit led. The mother wasn't even sure what all or how, but she innately felt there's something here that could help. And obviously, if they had gone around to different preschools, she might have tried all of the things. And I see so many wonderful, amazing mothers who try different things where it's like, okay, essential oils. Okay, we're going to clean up their diet and their gut health. Okay, we're going to do occupational therapy and we're going to do all of these things. And when you still have parents that are at that emotional point of, I love this child, but I'm having such a hard time being around them, for her to reach out and say, I think this is it. I think I'm willing and brave. Also, that's the energy that you were giving that she could connect to as well.
100%. And, just even circling back to what we started with, Jenna, right? And without, getting too far ahead of ourselves, but, I also was willing to get out from behind my office door and tell the story, right? It's such a simple but powerful story. And, I know we, as of this recording, we went through a horrible time in human history, which I hope we never go through, called a pandemic, right? But regardless, there's a lot of docs who just are so what I call comfy on the couch in their own practices and aren't willing to get out there. Now, again, you don't have to go out and do it live, although that's my favorite way to do it. I mean, obviously through social media, which you know a lot about, Jenna, there's lots of ways to tell the story and get your message out there. And I don't know why more docs aren't willing to just tell the story.
Yes. So there's a popular phrase right now that I think about a lot, which is kids saying it's giving main character energy. And I'm like, why isn't this something that we have always said and always known? Why have we ever been comfy on the couch and had wallflower energy? Like, if we really think about it, who wants wallflower energy? And that idea that if each story is actively being written and we are the main character, then this is the certainty that we can have. And as I was looking at your website this morning, there was a phrase that struck me that I'd like to talk about how you developed, and I'm going to read it, this unshakable certainty in the power that each individual can be, do, and have absolutely anything that their heart truly values and their mind can visualize. How did you develop unshakable certainty?
Well, I would say there's lots of parts to that. Great question, by the way, Jenna. I would say there's lots of parts to that. One would be my daily meditation practice, right? And then as my good friend Liz Anderson Peacock says, experience trumps belief every time, right? So I had experiences in practice, like with Victoria. One of the other stories I was thinking of telling is about Francois, who was a little French-Canadian boy who very, very, very bright IQ-wise, but just had all kinds of health concerns and asthmas and puffers, and he'd been put on steroids, which had stunted his, growth and stuff. And when I saw him as a young adolescent at 13, 14, he was missing, you ready for this, Jenna? He was missing in a school year, on average, 50 to 90 days a year due to illness. How do you even get it done? And yet he was an A+ student because he was incredibly bright, right? But he missed the socialization piece and all that stuff. And so, he got under care. And as a result of getting his care, his mother was so inspired that she says, I want to come and help you spread the. She came work for me, Jenna, right? Fascinating. But here's Francois' story. Within months, he started missing less school. He stopped needing his puffer for asthma and so on, right? And he got to the point where the last 3 years of high school, he didn't miss one day of classes. One day, whereas pre that he was missing, as I said, 50 to 90. So, you have those experiences, Jenna, and you go, maybe there's something to this chiropractic philosophy. Maybe DD and BJ and Stevenson, really had something to teach. Yeah. And so those experiences help to solidify what I've read and studied for years, Jenna, which is universal principles, chiropractic philosophy in general. And that allowed me to form this awareness I would use. And again, I'll go back to Wayne Dyer. Somehow he's on my awareness today. Thank you, Wayne. He said that every time you say you believe something, Jenna, there's always a little shade of doubt in there, right? About a belief or if you believe. But when you know something, there is no belief part. There is no uncertainty. So through meditation, through creating a worldview, right? Which also involved answering the three unanswerable questions, in philosophy, which is what or where is God? Why does God exist? How does God exist? And then tied to that is why did God create humankind? Creating a philosophical framework for that and then having experiences that fit that framework. When you have that level of certainty, Jenna, there is no other experience I believe I could attract in my mortal life that would change my certainty in that. The other way to say what I just said, Jenna, is very simply, one of my great friends says, God doesn't make any junk, Tom. Mm-hmm. So go back to the major premise, Stevenson's first principle of the 33, right? There's a universal intelligence in all matter, which means it's in me, it's in you, it's in all people, Jenna, right? That continually, not just some of the times, not just when the going's good, continually gives to it all its properties, acts, thereby maintains in existence. So knowing what I know about the creative intelligence, the grand organizing design, which I call God, right? Kind of not into the whole old dude with a beard on a cloud image so much, Jenna, right? But the grand organizing design, that universal intelligence, when I see that and I know that I'm a part of that and I know you're a part of that and all the people I serve are, they could be anything they want to be, do anything they want to do and have anything they want to have as a result of that, right? So now, again, let's be clear. There are some human forms. I'm never going to be black-skinned, 7'4", probably never going to be a starter on an NBA basketball team, right? So let's be clear. There are some physical limitations to some of those things, but within our potential, Jenna, I think most people are not recognizing and expressing their full potential, right? Which is why our mission statement at my company, Jenna, is to awaken, it's a very important word, to awaken individuals to the power of authentic expression and help them realize their full, because most people don't even understand what's full, their full potential, both personally and professionally, right? And so, great question, by the way, Jen. I hope I answered it.
Absolutely. Well, and this kind of leads in because I think that a lot of times people have this pushback of, well, it's great that you've had these experiences, but, my life has had these experiences. These things have been terrible for me. These things, like, I'm so burned out on believing that my body can heal from this. And I think that you even answered that in saying to awaken. So if they can't believe in their body being able to heal anymore, you're talking about awakening something that is already inside them, not trying to find it in any of these, like Dr. Sid Williams would say, pill, potion, or lotion. And that is really reassuring because I think that, we have experiences where someone we love has a sudden heart attack, where someone we love who had no business having cancer dies from it, where a child has an inoperable brain tumor. These things where it's like these experiences that seem to add up to this very negative reality that seems to cement in, contrary to everything you just said. And yet I think the key word there is, or the two, awaken and full potential.
I agree, Jenna, right? And, what you brought up some really beautiful examples of physical plane things like an inoperable brain tumor for a child or, a difference. I lost a dear chiropractic friend of mine as of this recording just 2 days ago. A great chiropractor who, was on a cruise with his wife, didn't feel good, went and got checked. They said, you need to go home, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And in 6 weeks, he's left us, right? And it's like, how? This guy's a chiropractor. How does that stuff happen? And I would offer this, Jenna, right? This is my consideration of some of those. First, don't let the negative few ruin the positive many, right? Why people tend to latch on to these few exceptions to principles and concepts and then just let that destroy their belief, if they're still at the place of belief, not knowingness. I don't understand that, but it is. But then even if you want to do a deep dive, which my good friend Pete Emmer and I have done until the wee hours of the morning on some of these concepts and stuff, it's like, it goes back to the spirit guided piece, Jenna, for me, okay? We are spiritual beings. Stop. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So on the physical plane, a lot of that stuff is hard to comprehend. It's hard to understand. Divorces, traumas, bad car wrecks, things that happen in the physical plane, Jenna, are very hard to interpret, and the negative, bad parts of it suck. Right? There's no questions. But we're spiritual beings having that human experience, right? So what I do often as a coach is I do my best to help people transcend or awaken to that reality and then go on the spirit plane. Einstein was very, very wise man, I believe, right? And one of the things he said is the quality of our life is directly proportional to the quality of the questions we ask. So rather than asking the question, why is this happening to me, which would be a very common question on the physical plane, Jenna, right? Change the question to, why is this happening for me? Mm-hmm. If you go into the spirit plane on that level, Jenna, and think about it on a more of a spiritual plane, you can recognize that the most subluxation-free physical body on the planet still has a spiritual journey to attend to. And I do not profess to be arrogant enough to even begin to understand, the grand organized design's grand plan, but I have trust or certainty that there is a plan, and that in the big picture of that spirit's life and the other souls that it touches, that there is a purpose to that. And some people, well, you're working on blind faith. I say, I'm not working on blind faith. I'm working on a certainty of a construct that works for me. And I'm humble enough to not try and profess that I am God and that I know the answer to all of these things. But I can tell you, Jenna, from coaching now for over 30 years as of this recording, I have had and experienced some horrific things on the other side of phone calls, just incredible things that just empower me and make me think that I have no problems in my life, for one, and that, the indomitability of the human spirit to transcend things, like we're talking, just again, I won't regale the audience with the horror, but just lots of really, really nasty stuff. But I can tell you, Jen, that perspective comes from time and distance. And with enough time and distance, I've been able to help people reframe that, ask the question, why did this happen for me? And then many times, Jenny, you can see the dominoes tumble, and you can allow that experience happened when it did at exactly the right time in their life to help them move in a direction in their life that allowed them to be exactly where they are in their life or their business now, which I would offer having an awareness and an acceptance that where people are in their life or business is exactly where they're supposed to be. It might not be where they're going to stay, Jenna, but it's exactly where they're supposed to be. That is so incredibly empowering because, to use a physical metaphor, you can't leave a place you've never been. You can't leave St. Louis, Missouri, you've never been there. And you can't leave the place you are in your life or your business unless you can have complete awareness and or acceptance and hopefully understanding of the circumstances that brought you there. Because from that place of ownership, you can leave if you choose, right?
Yes. And I love that perspective coming from time and distance. I see that in my own life, the things where I can look back on really painful things and with gratitude and see a little bit of that perspective. I've told the story before, so I won't get into it completely, but my dad died of a sudden heart attack on a family vacation in Colorado. And the first thing that I tell people now, 8 years later, 9 years later, is what a beautiful way to die. And I can give that to my dad now to be like, he died on a mountain trail with his boots on, looking up at the clear blue sky, not in a hospital. He had his best day ever, and then he transcended. And can I have enough gratitude to say that happened when and where and how in the best way for him? What a beautiful thing. What a gift.
I agree, Jenna. I couldn't agree more. I have got several, without giving away too many secrets in case my family listens to some of this recording today, but I've shot several videos, Jenna, when I was out in the wilderness, because that's where I spend an enormous amount of time in nature. Some of my friends say I was raised by wolves. It's not quite true, and because again, as one of my great friends says, where is God not, Tom, right? Which is true. I just find it easier to see the creative intelligence in nature, Jenna. So it's one of the reasons I spend a lot of time, because I feel much closer to that heartbeat, if you will, of nature, the earth mother, universal intelligence or whatever, But anyways, I've shot several videos that I've then put on USBs and put in my safety deposit box so that when I transcend, Jenna, it will hopefully give my family some awareness and understanding of who I was and the gratitude I have for them allowing me to do some of what's perceived sometimes as the crazy things I've done, to be out alone in nature for, days or weeks or months on end, enjoying my life to my fullest, right? Even though that wasn't their path, it's my path. And then them having the trust and faith in me to allow me to do that is incredibly meaningful to this being, right?
Yes. Well, I think too, I want to speak to people who feel like they aren't living life to their fullest. You talked about you can't leave a place you haven't been. And I think that so many people are in this place of burnout. And, I think about chiropractors who I've talked to who are even looking at different ways to earn money, who just feel really blocked in their current situation. They feel blocked in where they are. How do they begin to live this life to its fullest?
Wow, that's a very loaded question. We got what, 6-7 hours in this recording, Jen?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Yeah, great. I thought so. Well, I would offer a couple of perspectives, and some people will say, "Oh, those are cliches," but you know what? Cliches have power and meaning in them because they're based upon some truths, Jenna, right? And I found myself in a consult with a couple of very powerful docs a couple of days ago outside of Toronto that this just happened to come up, and it's a Martin Luther King quote. You don't have to see the whole staircase to take the first step, right? And so, what might be the first step for some of these docs that, that feel stuck? Well, an exercise based upon what we just conversed on would be to do a path review, a journey review of their life and their practice and say, how have I got here? And how is me being here serving me? Right? Because say they're not seeing the volume they want to see or not generating the income they want to see as a result of that generate. Like the negatives are probably first and foremost on their mind. But what are the positives? What are the blessings? What are the gifts? Because one of the universal principles I adhere to, which is based upon, my long study of universal principles, is that there's a lot of balanced energy that says that energy in the universe is balanced at all times. There's equal cold, to heat. There's equal dark to light. Well, if that's true, then at any time there's some of these negative things happen in our lives and our perceived negative things, as you told the beautiful story of your father's transcension, it's like there's some positives there. So what are the positives? And what I would encourage people, docs, to do is to list it throughout the entire hologram of their life. Okay, so look at their life, physical, mental, spiritual, family, career, social, and financial, and say, what are the blessings? And I could just hear, somebody say, there's no blessings to financial. I'm in a bad spot. I have lots of debt and stuff like that. I say, no, but as a result of that, right, maybe you're going to actually get off your butt and it's going to allow you to read some books or hire a coach or do some other things that will help you expand your knowledge, your awareness, of business, of life, of finance and stuff like that, which will allow you to, maybe going back to Martin Luther King, take the second step on the staircase, right? Now, sitting on the couch, doing nothing, Jen, is definitely not the path out of that, right? But I would say starting with some of those basics, and then the other piece I would add, without getting into the 7-hour discussions, and I would go back and really clarify what I call your North Star. Right? Every business, every life, ideally, has taken the time to elucidate what I call their North Star, which is their ultimate guidance mechanism, right? So we're talking about purpose, mission, values, right? And when you can clarify what is your purpose in your practice or in your life, and how you are going to actualize that through your mission, and or ideally, what values that are absolutely paramount and important to you that allow you to operationalize that purpose and mission. It doesn't matter how convoluted life gets, how murky the skies get, Jenna, you can always identify the North Star and it can pull you through some of those dark times. So I know those are just a few things, Jenna, but it's such a big topic that I've invested 30 years of my life, coaching people through that. I think there's a couple of good places to start.
That is, that's wonderful. And, the first thing that I think when I hear your purpose, your mission, your values is like, oh, this sounds like work, and it is that inner work of taking time to be quiet, which I rarely am. I'm rarely quiet. I'm usually talking. And I'm usually in a busy household. I have 4 children, ages 6 to 15. And, I'm an extrovert. And so I would rather be with people. And this comes back to Dr. Peter Amlinger always talks about the sacred silence of, can I be calm enough, be still and know that I am God to actually find out these things. And then I always have my bullet journals around and that pen and paper, that actual kinetic feeling of writing these things out. But I love that North Star idea because it is such a visual that we can grab onto. My husband and I in 2019, 2020, were just really at odds and just, it just felt like we were never on the same page for anything. And we met with our pastor who was also doing some life coaching. And he said, let's make lists of your core values. What a simple thing. You can both sit down with that pen and paper. And then I loved that he guided us through what are the things on both of your lists that match up. You can have your individual ones, but what are your ones that match up? And the first thing that we really agreed on, and over the years we've tweaked it to a phrase, simple things done well.
Nice.
And it's amazing how that has become our North Star with the things, whether it's making a purchasing decision, whether it is with what we're doing with our time. We come back to this North Star of what do? We do things simply and we do things well. And there's others that we wrote down, but that one particularly has been life-changing for us, that we don't need to complicate things more. Every time, even in business, that I'm complaining to my husband and I'm like, maybe I need a new software. Maybe I need a new thing. Maybe I need a gadget. And he's like, simple things done well. And it's amazing how that changes life.
It is true. I'll put a massive plug-in for an exercise just very similar to what your pastor recommended, Jenna, right? That I use at my couples retreats. It's called a needs, wants, and likes exercise, right? And so when my wife and I first did this exercise, again, we were at odds during the phase of our long time together. We actually celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary last year, Jenna. It was just
congratulations.
Thank you. That just seems bizarre to me that we're in that category of chronological age that we could actually be together that long. But anyways, the tail end of that, so likes are things that you just like to do, and you could do them and they might be completely different than what your spouse does, but that's fine. But listing them is important, right? And then the next level of things is wants. These are things that they're not deal breakers, but they're really important to you. And again, just writing those. But the highest level one are core value needs, and expressing those and looking for the similarities. But then tied to that, Jenna, the other thing I would offer would be to get your spouse or your partner to completely elucidate how you could support them in that value. I remember when I asked my wife, I was surprised. I had 4 values at the time, she had 5, and I was surprised at some of her values. And she was in a particularly argumentative phase, right? And so she's like, well, how could you not know that? And I said, well, because I'm a Cro-Magnon man and I'm, a little dense. But then I said, well, now, how could I support you with that value? Or what do I do that contravenes that value? Jenna, it was a 14-hour day for us at our wilderness property. And I'll tell you something, it moved mountains. It is literally the reason. And that has to have been more than 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. And I would offer that as a North Star in our life is one of the reasons that we have enjoyed, the long relationship we have together. So yeah, I don't care if you're talking about a business, you're talking about a life, you're talking about a relationship, having some version of a North Star, Jenna, to guide you is incredibly valuable. And I think it's even more valuable now in, this information era we're in than it was in the Industrial Revolution. Life's more complex. We get information dumps, in nanoseconds from our phones and our, different programs and social media platforms that we're investing in. And it can just become overwhelming, right? Mm-hmm. So to clear away that clutter, get that North Star, and your comment that elucidating your purpose and value sounds like work. I understand people's perspective on that, Jenna, but your very wise sentiment. It doesn't have to take a lot to just get quiet and still. So what my mind, body, spirit retreats that we teach, Jenna, we actually teach 5 different forms of meditation. Meditation isn't necessarily sitting down, TM, traditional meditation, going home all day, right? There's sitting meditations, there's standing meditations, there's walking meditations, there's, just the energy and vibration of being in nature can be a form of meditation, and then from that place you can get the guidance. And I will say this, Jenna, too, one other carrot in front of maybe some people's noses that are listening to this recording is it makes life so much easier. There's less energy expended when you can truly tap into that source, that higher mind, so to speak, than just, using your vast but very puny little educated brain to try and guide you in life. It can become exhausting because there's equal pros and equal cons to all things, right? If the universe is balanced at all times. So if it's equal, then why do anything? And people get stuck in that indifference and they do nothing. They just procrastinate, right? But there's something beyond that, which is, guidance from within, what I call your authentic self, right? And it allows you to do things in a much more direct and less confusing fashion than it would be to just listen to your educated brain, in my experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, where are some places that people can connect with you? I'm going to put all of the links for your website and things, but if people are reaching out, what are the best ways to start connecting with you?
Well, they could go to our website, right? Which is just www. It's kind of a long one to put in the first time, but after that, your cash will get it. It's Full Circle Coaching and andconsulting.com, right? That's one way. And then there's contact me as one of the principals there, right? And my email, just have them direct my email, Jenna, right? Which is, again, I'll give them an alias, which is really simple, less words. It's just drtom@drtompreston.com, right?
Wonderful.
Reach out. I would love to have a conversation. I love this profession, Jenna, and the people in it. And I've thought long and hard about some of the challenges in our world today, and the social unrest and the wars and just a lot of the horror that goes on. I don't know of a better tool than a properly intended chiropractic adjustment to help right that earth ship, so to speak, right? And the people that travel on it, right? There's lots of great things out there. Like you mentioned some earlier, Jenna, like, nutrition and essential oils. And, there's lots of great acupuncture, I think, is a great tool there. There's a lot of great things out there people could use. I just personally know, not believe, that there's no better, more efficient tool than a properly intended chiropractic adjustment to help people transcend, the challenges of their lives, which then helps their family transcend, which helps their community transcend, which helps their state or nation transcend, which will then help the world transcend. And I've committed my whole life to that. And getting the chance to speak with you today, and whoever can listen to this recording, is part of that journey. And I'm honored that you asked.
Well, thank you for joining me. And yes, thank you for sharing. And thank you for all that you do. I frequently say at the end of an episode, just like that father said in your story, from one parent to another, it is such a reassuring thing to me to think that my children are growing up in a world where previous generations are doing everything that they can in this universe to make it a wonderful place for these young, precious people to grow up. So from a mother to a father, thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Jenna. And I'll put it right back at you. Thank you for what you're doing, because it's making a difference.
Thank you.